And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. Merry Christmas to all of you. Hope you all had a great Thanksgiving weekend. And we are very thankful to be introducing you to a brand new partner here on the show, the Conduit Clothing Company. A lot of us just talk about standing up for what we believe in, but sometimes the hardest thing to do is just to start that conversation. And that's why we want to tell you about our friends over at Conduit. They're a Christian apparel company that's not just selling hats or shirts. They're building a movement to help believers like you represent your faith and share it boldly. So here's what's awesome. Every single order, even if it's just a $2 sticker, comes with a free hardcover ESV Bible. Not for you to keep, but to give away. To a friend, a coworker, a family member, someone who needs to hear the gospel. Conduit Clothing exists to help Christians get out of their comfort zone, to pray for the unsaved, and to be a light in a dark world. So if you're ready to wear your faith and share it, go to conduitclothing.com, CONDUIT. Conduitclothing.com. That's conduitclothing.com. Be bold, be faithful, be a conduit for Christ at conduitclothing.com. All right, coming up on today's show, we'll be joined at the bottom of the hour by our good friend Bob Vander Plaats. Next hour, we've been so busy, we've not had a chance to do one of these in a bit. So it's going to be your turn to ask me anything coming up in the next hour of the show. But let's kick this thing off with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
In D.C. Right before the long Thanksgiving holiday weekend, an Afghan national by the name of Ramanullah Lakanwal has been identified as the suspected shooter in the ambush attack that killed one National Guard member and wounded another just blocks away from the White House. The CIA said Thursday that Lakanwal had previously worked with the U.S. government, including the CIA, as a member of a partner force in the Kandahar province that ended in 2021 following the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. On Thanksgiving Day, President Trump had to make the gut-wrenching announcement that West Virginia Guardsman Sarah Breckstrom had succumbed to her injuries in the targeted attack.
She's no longer with us. She's looking down at us right now. Her parents are with her. This just happened. She was savagely attacked. She's dead. She's not with us. Incredible person. Outstanding in every single way, in every department. That's horrible.
According to reporting from the Associated Press, advocates who knew the man warned for months he was slipping into increasing instability. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the State Department has paused all visa issuance for individuals traveling on Afghan passports. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says there's a fundamental problem with the way the Biden administration supposedly vetted refugees from countries like Afghanistan.
We have a government, when a country is sending us someone, we have a government that is stable in that country that can actually share information with us. How do we vet someone that comes from Afghanistan or Somalia or Yemen if they don't have a government that we can communicate with that will share information with us?
In other news from over the weekend, President Trump issued a written address on social media focusing in on how millions of immigrants, both illegal and technically legal, have taken advantage of Americans' kindness and generosity, pointing out that someone living in the country on a green card making $30,000 a year is eligible for around $50,000 a year in benefits. He also highlighted the ongoing problems with Somalians in Minnesota, both the problems they're causing on the ground and the fraud case ongoing, and called Minnesota Governor Tim Walz retarded. Trump concluded his e-address by saying the only solution is reverse migration, warning those in the country illegally they won't be here for much longer. Sedition update. Here's Senator Mark Kelly digging in on his charge for service members and deep state ghouls. They should sabotage the Trump administration through insubordination.
It puts a lot of burden on the troops to make a decision in real time.
It puts a tremendous amount of burden on officers in the military, but that is their responsibility. And they can figure out, a reasonable person can tell something that is legal and something that is illegal.
So would you refuse these specific orders to strike drug boats if you were still in uniform?
My concern is with the service members, that we're gonna put these individuals in a really, really tough decision, in a tough place. And they may find out, down the road that they did something that is illegal. It is not fair to them.
In completely unrelated news, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth was the target of a Washington Post hit piece wherein the rag cited anonymous sources saying Hegseth had given illegal orders when it came to the destruction of life, limb, and drug boats in the waters surrounding the nation. Hegseth responded with this post featuring an image of a parody children's book titled Franklin Targets Narco-Terrorists. Franklin is a turtle character aiming an RPG at a terrorist drug boat. The director of the Food and Drug Administration's vaccine division told agency staff in a memo that an internal review found at least 10 children died after and because of receiving the COVID vaccine. The 3,000-word memo obtained by media outlets was written by Dr. Vinay Prasad, director of the FDA's Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. In it, Prasad claims that agency staff determined that no fewer than 10 of 96 child deaths reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, or VAERS, between 2021 and 2024 were related to COVID vaccination. He said the true numbers could be much higher, accusing the agency of ignoring the safety concerns for years. Black Friday sales for online shopping set a record this weekend, topping $11.8 billion as more shoppers opted to skip crowded stores. Online spending surged 9.1% from last year. And finally, we go once again back to Chicago, where a man who has a long criminal record of physically attacking random people, mostly women, has been arrested and charged with felonies for 2 random attacks back in June. An investigation by the local CBS affiliate found William Livingston has been arrested at least 20 times, dating back to 2012, but keeps being released from custody. Headline from the Babylon Bee: Chicago judge hoping 23rd time is the charm for rehabilitating violent criminal. That's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at BIRCH Gold. There's a lot of politicians that should be getting coal in their stockings from the American people for Christmas, but BIRCH Gold thinks as a smart planner that you deserve silver. That's why for every $5,000 you purchase between now and December 22nd, that's, I believe, Aaron, is that our last show of the year, December 22nd? I think that is.
23rd.
23rd,
yes.
Thank you. All right, BIRCH Gold. So anytime between now and December 22nd, BIRCH Gold will send you an ounce of silver, which is up over 60% this year. All right, because smart people diversify. They've got a hedge. That's why we encourage you to buy gold from BIRCH Gold. With the rate cuts from the Fed in 2026, the dollar is going to be worth even less. What happens if the AI bubble bursts? Diversify. Let BIRCH Gold Group help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. And for every $5,000 you buy, you'll get an ounce of silver for your stocking or for your kids. What a great way to teach them about saving smartly. Just text my name, Steve, to take advantage of this to 989898 and claim your free eligibility for this offer. Again, text Steve to the number 989898 today. Text Steve to 989898 today, because this free silver with qualifying purchase promotion ends on December the 22nd. Real quick, guys, on the, and this is probably an unfair question, which is exactly why I'm going to ask it. But on the Black Friday shopping, you know, one of the things we go through every election cycle now, well, with the early voting on our side in particular, is are we cannibalizing people that otherwise would have shown up to vote? You see what I'm trying to say? Or how much is this, are we growing our base, and then how much of it is it just cannibalizing those who were going to vote anyway? All right. You see where I'm going with this? So on the online spending for Black Friday over the weekend, do we have any clue? Has there been anybody that is connected any dots? How much of that is actually increased spending and confidence in the economy, which we desperately need? And then how much was it just people because we had a historic winter storm all throughout the Midwest? I mean, we set a record here in central Iowa with November snowfall. We had 9 inches of snow. I mean, that's an all-time record for a November snowfall in our state. So this went on all throughout the Midwest. If you probably watched a lot of the football games over the weekend throughout the Midwest, I mean, you saw just, you know, snowballs, historic, look like the opening montage of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer out there in many of these games. All right, so with that, and people not, you know, maybe just not wanting to brave the crowds, as you said, Aaron, do we know how much of this was cannibalizing or was growing? How much people were investing for Black Friday? Does anybody know?
I don't know. I haven't seen any level of expertise. My gut says that it is a combination of the storm and certainly not consumer confidence the way you're talking about, like actively looking at the bells and whistles of this economy. I think it's more of this is just what Americans do, and they have to get kneecapped a lot harder not to spend at Christmas.
Yeah, I don't think we'll know until, I think in-person sales won't probably be out till this week or maybe even later. So we won't really know for sure the answer to that question. I'm erring on the side of slight optimism for now, because this was even they were expecting a record-breaking sales for Black Friday. This beat even those expectations.
That's good. That's
so
good.
that in and of itself, and this is all from Adobe. They have a product that tracks online sales.
Okay, good.
So this beat even their expectations, and their expectations were record-breaking.
So today's actually Cyber Monday.
Yep.
Could this give us a hint how much of this was cannibalization if Cyber Monday is, say, down?
I think so.
Seems like it,
Meaning that people voted early. I mean, the shopping they might have done on Monday online, they did it on Thursday or Friday. On the other hand, though, and that would spin it the other way, right? I mean, if today is a very strong day, then that may be some kind of an indicator that this was actually a show of strength that we desperately needed to see, right? Okay. All right. Just I wanted to clarify something on that before we moved on to the rest of the montage. The FDA memo. Let's just start there, because I think we can have the quickest conversation about that. The FDA memo is a surprise to no one on this show. As far as I know, I am the only person that has as a byline on 2 national bestsellers on the scamdemic. I don't know somebody else that does. Maybe there is, but I'm not aware of it. Everything that's in this report, if you were listening to this show in 21 and 22, you heard all this, and all of this documented in real time. And I'm just in a place right now where I feel like I just don't think it's fair to you to get you all worked up about things unless there's going to be consequences, or there are actions we can take. Like, we were right to get you worked up about this in 2021 and 22, because you could still make choices to absolve yourself from whatever it was they were trying to do to us and why. But that era has passed. I mean, they're still out there selling COVID boosters, and, there's fruit flies at those counters when you go by drugstores and see that. So we're at the point now where there's nothing more we can do within our own sphere of authority as people to push back on this. So either the system of people we elected will act and people will be held accountable, or they will not. So I'm not planning some 15, 20-minute monologue on this, because I'm just at the point now, it's why I think is that the first time you've mentioned the seditious 6 in your montage, Aaron? And it's right, I believe.
No, I've had it on 3 or 4 times now.
You've seen me not address this at all, talk about it at all, because it's a talking point. And prove me wrong. I'm kind of at the point that I'm just not into devoting time, and it's probably terrible for my engagement numbers, if I'm being honest with you. And I always try to be, which is why a lot of people do spend a lot of time engaging you with content that there will be no action upon. I'm just not into that, not my thing. So I'm kind of at, call me when the tribunals start, or I don't know what else to do at this point. Why keep belaboring things I've been saying for 4 or 5 years? How many times can I say, see, I told you so? But you guys' thoughts on either my own reaction or your reaction to this report?
Well, it's an understandable reaction. I mean, this entire montage is just either a consequence-free environment, or when consequences are implemented, there are still one entire political party that attacks those who protect actual Americans from evil. This is why the consumer confidence thing, it's not nothing, but listen, just constantly, tiptoeing through whistling through the graveyard, and just hoping for a robust economy when everywhere you look, you are betrayed, poisoned, shanked, I don't know. We have to raise our game. We have to raise our standards across the board. It's just, we've known this for a long time. They tried to kill us. They didn't care. There have been no consequences. If that's the status quo, there's more coming, and it's probably going to be at the feet of your children.
I mean, without punishment, it's the goofy mean. I'll effing do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why would they, what incentive would there be to stop? I mean, they literally put in the trials, in the Moderna trials, it literally just said a kid died right there in the trial.
We've used the term.
And they just lied about it, and there was just no consequences for this.
Yeah.
No.
And we've talked about this before. Why, if you don't have a Christian worldview, why wouldn't you lie?
Correct.
If this is just getting something.
Correct.
It's to your advantage to do so. So once again, we've used this term before. What is the limiting principle? That's what Steve is talking about.
Yes.
Why wouldn't they it's boot to throat. They believe that you were made to be ruled, and you keep proving them right.
When it comes to the Moderna stuff, I have the same reaction. When it comes to the FDA memo, I have generally the same reaction that you do. I think it was today or yesterday is the anniversary of Patient Zero in China.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 6 years since Patient Zero, and look at everything that has gone on since then. And credit to Dr. Vinay Prasad for finally stating this. Apparently, it pissed off the right enough people that it's a story that's even written about in mainstream rags. When it comes to the seditious six, I do seem to think that because this is going on out in the open, this is going on the TV cameras, they're saying it right out in the open. This just openly seditious language right out in the open. That pisses me off. That it does. I mean, that thing at the end that you heard Mark Kelly say, I'm just really concerned for the troops because they may be participating in something they know is illegal, and down the line, they might be held accountable for that. That's basically saying when we get back in power, if you follow any orders that you're given from the Trump administration or any tentacles therein, we're going to put you in jail for that. If that doesn't rise to the level of, hey, we're going to bring you back in and we're going to hold you accountable, I don't know, just turn out the lights on the entire experiment.
Yep.
At that point.
Yep. All right, before we get to the other thing I want to talk about, because even though it would seem like, I mean, what individually could we do on immigration other than just call ICE? There is a major thing that we need to do internally to get the kinds of actions from government that you want. All right. And I'll get to that in a moment after I tell you about our friends over at Relief Factor. You're going to meet Bob. He's 63. He has spent the last 40 years as a body man and a car painter, which that takes a lot of wear and toll on your body. He said, listen, man, I could barely walk, couldn't make it up the stairs. Then he's tried the 3-week quick start from Relief Factor. By day 4 or 5, he said, I felt the change. After just 8 days on Relief Factor, I was 75% better. He says he's comfortable now, says he's thoroughly impressed. These kinds of transformations cannot be ignored. Now, no guarantee. But over the years, over 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start from Relief Factor. 70% of them had the same kind of results as Bob and stuck with the product long term. So why don't you see, if you don't see a difference in your pain in 3 weeks or less, especially when it costs just $20 to find out if this is what you've been looking for to deal with the chronic pain from too much inflammation in your joints. ReliefFactor.com is where you can go. It's just $20 to find out at ReliefFactor.com. On immigration. Listen, we need an absolute moratorium on immigration. We've needed it for quite some time, but what just went on with the National Guards people over Thanksgiving is just the final straw. And the thing you have to understand is that 100% of crimes by foreigners are preventable. 100%. Because no foreigner has a right to be in the United States of America. All right, we cannot prevent crime from actual Americans. So sometimes you'll get the apologist that will try to emotionally blackmail you with, well, still, my crimes are committed by Americans. Well, it doesn't matter. Because 100% of crimes committed by foreigners are preventable. There doesn't have to be a single foreign crime, not a single one. We don't have to tolerate a single one. They're 100% preventable. We don't have to let anybody in. We don't have to have anybody come over the border. We could close it tomorrow. We closed it during COVID, did we not?
Yes.
We did. We could close it right now if we wanted. 100% of crimes by foreigners are preventable. So the crime rate among foreigners is irrelevant. Furthermore, I could apply this to virtually everything we're concerned about right now. Can't get Americans to shrink government, right? You know what would shrink government right now overnight? The math the president did in that post with these green card carriers are getting in benefits right away. Just no more of those. Out. Not doing that anymore. Mass deportations, you're out. Nothing for foreigners, you're out. That would shrink that would be one of the biggest shrinkages of government we've ever seen if we did that. The state of the government school system right now, you're all out. You have your own country. America's for Americans. You're out. The driving down of wages, the high cost of affordability, you're out. No, we're not doing indentured servant classes anymore. You're out. America is for Americans. For too long now, it is very clear we've just let the rest of the world just completely take advantage of our generosity and turn this place into their dumping ground. And there needs to be a market correction. 10-year moratorium on immigration. Legal and illegal. Notice I put legal first. And the only possible exception would be persecuted Christians. But the vetting process for that's going to be real tight. And chances are, if you're a fighting age young man, you can stay in your country and fight. You don't need to come over here. Remember when I said that we imported all the Afghans? Remember how heartless we were called for saying things like, why are we importing a bunch of fighting age Afghanis? Why don't they just stay there and fight for their own country?
Correct.
Remember we said that?
Yes.
We got called all kinds of names for saying that. But here's the thing. If we're going to ask our politicians to do this and hold the line on these things, there needs to be a mass reset of our own mindset, and that we can control. And I'm not going to name any names, but over the weekend I saw a very prominent, rightfully prominent influencer on our side whose work we have lauded in the past and admired. And this person's mother went on X to instantly defend herself against charges of being racist and felt a need to recount for everybody all the non-white people that she is either friends with or family members with. And as soon as I saw that, I thought of Yoda's famous line, "This is why you lose." You know, I've spent a good deal of time over the course of this year saying, hey, you know, you have to love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? We did a speaking engagement earlier this year that a lot of people, even people really close to me, told me not to go do, just so I could spread that message. We don't get to be buttholes and douchebags like just because things aren't going well. There's not an exception for that. That we don't have to love our neighbor as we love ourselves anymore. And that we can't go from one extreme where the previous generation put loving your neighbor as you love yourself ahead of loving God, so there was no truth. And we just had to bend over backwards and assume the position for the entire world and every worldly influence. We can't go so far and swing the pendulum the other way now, though, that we're essentially, you know, doing Christian intifadas. We can't do that either. Because love your neighbor as you love yourself is the second greatest commandment. It is second. It's second below loving God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, right? Okay. Right. But it also, therefore, if it's second, it's still pretty high up, right? Okay. So there's a bit of a balance here, you know? Don't go and promote things that racists and Nazis, like kinism and stuff like that. Don't go and promote things that racists and Nazis promote. And if you do, I'm going to do your knuckles with the ruler, with this microphone, what happened to Todd growing up with the nuns at the Catholic school. I'm going to rake your knuckles right here on the air. And I've done it all year long, have I not? Correct. But saying and doing things that legitimately racist and Nazis say and do is not the same thing as tolerating or being defensive for being slandered as one, and the need to defend yourself all the time. This is the generational choice you have. Before we even get to how can we possibly get Stephen Miller's actual talking points into policy in the Trump administration, before we get there, amongst us, there has to be a generational mindset paradigm shift. And you're just going to have to learn, and the young men are learning this, sometimes maybe too good to the point they're freaking us out, but especially the boomer generation, which has been falsely smeared for their entire lives as racist, is very prone to this. And I'm going to assume this influencer's mom would be in that generation. And they're still the biggest voting bloc generation we have. There's one more election cycle, that'll be the case. And then eventually Father Time will remain undefeated. So this is something we have to address right now. You're just going to have to, this is your choice. This is all of our choices now. You can put up with being called racist and being smeared and slandered as racist and Nazis by liars and the liars who love their lies, from the father of lies, who are trying to both murder you and your way of life. That is an option. You can learn to not care what your enemies ever say or think about you. Or you can continue to be defensive to the point you're going to lose whatever's left of your way of life. Those are your options. Those are it. Over the years, there's been plenty of things and expressions Trump has said where I've thought, boy, I wish we would have not said it that way. Calling Tim Walz a retard, though, is not one of them. If Tim Walz is not retarded, no one ever has been. That's just gospel. So that's not an example. But there have been plenty of examples where I'm like, man, I really wish we wouldn't have put it that way. But notice, though, on none of those times has he ever come back. Not even once, even if it would have benefited him. Maybe even at times you morally could have made the case he should have. Not once has he ever come back and said, though, maybe I could have put that differently. And let me demonstrate to you that, Rush used to say for years on his show, you can't disprove a negative, which is why they use so many of their attacks in the negative form. And before we can ask for our elected officials to do the tough task it will take to undo the damage done to this country, we are all going to have to, in our own minds, first and foremost, get a lot tougher. And no, don't ever recount how many non-white people you've ever spoken to, how many non-Christian people you have relationships with. Don't ever do that ever again. We're going to get an early start on New Year's resolutions for 26. Can I get a witness on that? You're never doing that ever again. Everyone within the sound of my voice, you're never doing that ever again. If you're a believer, trust the Holy Spirit will convict you if instead of just being slandered and smeared as a Nazi or a racist, you actually start behaving as one. And if you can't trust that, and you should, trust me, because I'll pimp slap you for it, because I got zero tolerance for it. I have no white pride. I have no white guilt. I don't care. I am devoid of both. I am devoid of your emotional blackmails. I grew up with emotional blackmail. I've never let anybody emotionally blackmail me ever since. It's never happened once, and it won't ever happen again. Get there. Get there. Get there. No, you're not going to have to defend a damn thing. No, you're not. We have the people out here with the twerking for the children every Pride Month. Want to say, hey, you can't be my judge. Only God is my judge. Emulate that. On that, they're right, just from the entirely wrong demonic premise. But we have to get to a point where we don't care. It just doesn't bother us. We're not defensive at all. Because until we're there, we're not going to be able to get our politicians to conduct the kinds of policies it'll take to fix this cancer. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at Preborn. I know a lot of you are looking for great options, trusty, dependable options, but also significant options for your end-of-year giving. There is no more significant gift that you can make than the gift of life. And when we're talking about the battle for life, you also might be making an investment in eternal life, because I certainly don't think it helps your chances of coming to Christ to murder your own child, typically. I mean, what we have seen in the last couple of election cycles in this country, in fact, is a huge uprising of women with seared consciences and hardened hearts, who, rather than seeking forgiveness for the grievous sin they have committed, instead want it justified and validated and promoted. They want to shout their abortion. And so this is where great ministries like Preborn come in. That's why we have been so proud to have this partnership with them here in the Blaze over the last few years. And we've been very proud of all of you, too, for your generosity in making it successful. You guys have literally helped save tens of thousands of babies. For today, for as little as $28, you can make a donation that could fund an ultrasound that, as soon as today, may save a baby's life, and maybe the eternal life of its mama as well. And here's the thing, though. That's not where the battle ends. And that's the big thing about why we are so supportive of Preborn here, is they're now there for this new family. They do confront moms with that ultrasound. But then once mom turns away from darkness and into the light, now they are there to offer her grace, sometimes for up to 2 years after the baby is born, to make sure this family gets off on the right footing. Practical things like diapers and car seats, intimate things like counseling, all free of charge, though none of it is free. And that's where you come in, give a gift today to this 5-star charity, and make it tax deductible as well at preborn.com/Steve. Again, that's preborn.com/Steve. Let's welcome in our good friend, Bob Vander Plaats. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Doing really well. Happy Thanksgiving.
Belatedly, but yeah, we're past it's Christmas time now.
I don't know. We should always be thankful, right?
And Christmas has thankfulness too. So
amen.
On to Christmas we are. Listen, man, Erzin cracks the whip over here. I'm taking advantage of as many Christmas days as we possibly can. Not to mention, we got a foot and a half of snow out there. All right, so it's looking like Christmas.
It looks like Christmas, yes. That's for sure.
So, you and I both over the Thanksgiving weekend, for the most part, kind of, backed away, took some time off, some time with family. And when you and I were talking this morning and just kind of getting caught up on where things are, we got into an organic conversation that I think we should extend to this show, because we're working so hard right now to reach the young men. And I'm getting my itinerary set for America Fest here in a couple of weeks. And so, of course, I've thought a lot about Charlie here in the last few days as I've been, preparing that and prepping that. And, this was so central to his ministry, to his cause, was reaching the young men. And I said something last week that I think, there's going to be a revolution among our young men, Bob. I think that's just apparent now. What's debatable is the type it will be. Will it be Jacobin? Will it be French Revolution? Power to the people, and then, a reign of terror follows. So it's based strictly on anger and frustration. Or will it be the American Revolution? No king but Jesus. We're sending Geneva Bibles to every home as an act of Congress, right? Will it have a higher moral calling than just your frustration with elites that hate you, so that you then end up becoming exactly what you claim to once oppose? And I think it's going to be the older men that are going to decide this. And I think whether or not the older men step in now to actively disciple the younger men, and more importantly, emulate that which they are, model that which they are discipling, that these are not just phrases. And I think for a lot of us now, I hate to say this, I'm 52 now, I'm in the older men category. You're 10 years older than me, so I get to say that about you. But I'm going to catch up to you eventually.
He loves, no,
I do.
You're not.
I do.
You might get to 62, but I'll be 72.
Yeah, I know. I'm probably eventually going to catch up with you, I'm guessing. Okay. But I think that is the charge of the older men. We skipped a generation systemically of male headship and leadership and discipleship in the culture, in the pulpit and in the home. And we're paying the price for it now. And I think for the young men to become the turnaround generation we are seeing the seeds of it, that we want to see grow and flourish and happen, we have to now break that cycle. And that, I think, is the charge of our generation. I think the Gen X generation, our charge will be, we may never take a full onboard leadership position in the culture per se. We have to be maybe the generation that prepares the younger, the millennials and the Zoomers to be the paradigm shift in the other direction. What are your thoughts? And that means we have to finish well.
Well, first of all, I'd say amen. Let it be so. But I think what you mentioned earlier, Steve, is that leadership is about modeling. The best type of leadership is modeling appropriate leadership. So being the type of leader you should be, getting off to yourself, invoking that spiritual discipline of being in the Word and being in prayer, of leading your family. I always say leadership is not optional. If you're married, you have a responsibility to lead in that marriage. If you are a parent, you have a responsibility to lead in that parenting. If you're a grandparent, which you are now, which I am now, you have a responsibility to lead in the parenting, but to lead and to lead well. And I think, Steve, what you and I were talking about as I was driving into my office this morning and before you went out for your workout is how many leaders we have watched who have failed the test of finishing strong. For whatever reason, that whether it be a sexual affair or an adultery deal or whether it be with money, but something that says they just didn't finish well. And I think you said, your constant prayer right now is finish well. My constant prayer right now is finish well. Because Satan does not take a break when you have the Steve Deace Show. Satan doesn't take a break when you have the family leader ministry. That's when he goes on the attack. Now, what can we do? Put guardrails in our life to say that we're going to hold up to the standards of integrity, that we're going to model whom the one we should model after, but then we can be followed by the ones that want to follow us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I am desperate that I don't want to be the 60-year-old guy who blew up his family for the 35-year-old side piece, and now his kids hate him and everything else. And you and I just know one too many people that is their story.
Sure it is.
Okay. And that's just even within the ministry circles that you and I are in, let alone in the broader political circles outside of kind of our native evangelical habitat where this kind of tension really isn't even felt. You're just like, well, hey,
why not?
Why not? Exactly. So number one, why is it that most men don't finish well? We see this particularly in the Old Testament. You see, the list of men who finish well combined with the list of men who don't is a lot shorter. It's a lot shorter. I guess you could say Samson finished well. His last great act was tearing down the demonic temple to the demon Dagon. But until he got to that point, though, he was not finishing well. Right? He's only in that position because he's blind. Okay, he's disabled. Yeah. He's imprisoned because he refused to finish his race. Right? So why is it, do you think, most men, particularly the ones that were the most on fire when they were younger, don't finish well?
Well, this is just Bob saying this, but I really believe they let down their guard. And you take a look at David. David, a very accomplished leader and warrior, a man after God's own heart. And all of a sudden, his men are out in the battlefield. Mm-hmm. This guy's meant for the battlefield, but his men are out in the battlefield. His competitive edge did not go away. But his competitive edge now went to somebody called Bathsheba. And how can I win her over? And once I win her over, and now I have a mistake, and she's pregnant, now how do I kill her husband? And so the thing just keeps going. The other part of those, Steve, is I really believe Satan. You take this out of the movie The Patriot, where Mel Gibson tells his sons as they're going up in the woods and looking at the British officers, he says, aim small, miss small, take out the officers first. And the reason you want to take out the officers first is everything's in disarray. The testimony has been disqualified. And so therefore, Steve Deace with a big platform, Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, look at you took out an officer. By Vander Plaats, you took out, all of a sudden your testimony gets disqualified and Satan can declare victory. But I believe that's why Paul instructs us in 1 Corinthians 16 to be on our guard. Be on alert. Stay on alert. Understand where your weaknesses are, where Satan has the ability to creep in, and put guardrails there to make sure that does not happen. And I got to tell you, Steve, I just had a guy who emailed me over the weekend, a former peer of mine. He's retired now, but saying just on his heart and in his dream is men with integrity, men with integrity, men with integrity. And that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for men with integrity to champion their marriages and to champion their families.
So it sounds to me like the first step you think is you have to be self-aware.
Amen.
That you have not arrived. That you've not matured to a point now that, you can tiptoe through the raindrops. And, I love my sports analogies, and you have a sports background too, so we always have sports analogies when it's you and I. But, the classic, whether it's pick a great coach in any sport, and they'll say the most dangerous time for a team is when everyone's talking great about them, right?
Exactly.
Telling you how great you are. Maybe you let your guard down a little bit, okay? Maybe you don't finish that rep. Maybe you don't give that kind of an effort. Maybe in the next game you're like, well, maybe I can kind of, go for mine a little bit more. I don't have to play defense this hard, that kind of a thing, right? Okay? There is a self-awareness factor. You have to understand from a Christian worldview, this side of eternity, you never arrive. You never arrive. That's also why Paul does not say win the race. There's a day that you get a certain place with how fast you ran the race, but instead to finish the race. It's the finish that is the win. It's not win, place, or show. Or were you sixth? Were you seventh? Okay, no one's keeping score. It's pass, fail. Did you finish the race, right? And you don't know when your race ends. And that's the first thing for we men in this situation. We have to be cognizant of that, is that literally today could be the last day of your race. Did you finish that race?
Yeah, you go back to Paul, and Darla and I were just in Greece. And when you're in Greece, you see a lot of these places that were dedicated to sports. Paul
uses a lot of sports analogies, by the way.
1 Corinthians 9.
Yeah.
He says, I make every one of my punches count, and I beat my body, I make it my slave, so I am not disqualified for the prize. What he's saying is that I'm taking my body under control. I'm not going to let my body lead. That's where men get into trouble. They let their body lead. And Steve, since I'm 10 years older than you, I can tell you, as you get older and you have more discretionary time and you have a lot of trophies in the back.
In the springtime, when kings went off to war, David stays behind.
And all of a sudden, you start letting down your guard. Like, what? Darla and I have been married 42 years. We're good. I would not take that for granted, that you're good. In fact, when people say to me, how can I pray for you? Frequently, I'll say, pray for my marriage. Why do I say pray for my marriage? I know that's where Satan would like to take me out. Take you out of the marriage, and that way what is? You just disqualified yourself for the prize. All these people that were looking up to you, they're no longer looking up to you. That's why it's be on your guard, be self-aware. A good team will scout themselves first before they scout their opponent.
Amen. John Wooden used to say, now, hey, this is maybe going too far. And when you've got Lou Alcindor and Bill Walton and Jamal Wilkes, you can say things like, we didn't watch film of the other team. We just watched film of ourselves. We're not saying, don't get that cocky. That's too cocky now. Right. Okay, right? All right. But there is something to scouting yourself harder than you scout what's around you. So once the self-awareness is there, and I'm asking too, as a guy that is 10 years younger than you, and it's just now become an old guy. You've been an old guy for a while now. Okay. So what safeguards? See, I can do this all day. Yeah. See, what safeguards do we need to put in place to make sure we finish well? What are the things? Once we're self-aware, then what do we do?
Well, this is now not Bob. This is Paul. Paul in 1 Corinthians 16, after he says, be on your guard, he says, stand firm in the faith. And meaning stand firm in the faith is, are you engaged in a church? Are you in his word? Are you anchored in prayer? Are you keeping yourself checked, but you're standing firm in the faith? Then after he says stand firm in the faith, he says be men of courage. And the Bible talks a lot about boldness and being a man of courage, but be a man of courage. I mean, take ground. You were meant to take ground. Don't just relax and sit on the balcony like David did. Take ground. And then he says, And when you're being a man of courage, you're going to take shots, you're going to take arrows. Then he says, be strong, meaning whatever way it is to be strong, have a community group, have accountability partners, whatever it is, but stay strong. And he says, do everything out of a heart of love. Do everything as an act of love. And I believe if you do that, 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13, 14a, and that's the verse on the bottom of all my emails, that is a very practical verse that guys can embrace and say, that's how I finish strong.
How big is having accountability around you?
I think it's
because I think that's a major thing. Is we reach a point in time where we it's not just that we think we've arrived. I got about a minute and a half to address this, but a lot of times the people around us think that we have.
Oh, definitely.
And making sure you are intentional about putting accountability and giving other men permission to do that, to perform that in your life.
And the reason why Billy Graham still gets the shout out for the Billy Graham rule that, I kept the hotel rooms to myself. I didn't travel with other women, didn't have lunch with other women, all that kind of stuff. That's accountability. He's putting accountability. He's putting parameters in his life. Who you're texting, who you're calling out to, what you're looking at on the screen. Mm-hmm. But you need to have accountability partners with you and ones that you're willing to be transparent with. Remember, and I don't mean to be only by the grace of God, there go I.
1 minute.
Porn is a big issue today that is taking down a lot of guys. Only by the grace of that is not my issue. But I know what other issues I have. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if it's porn, put in guardrails against porn. If it's a relationship, put in guardrails against that relationship. But you got to put in guardrails. You got to be able to be transparent with somebody that you know you can trust them with your life, because that's who you want to share it with as well.
Good stuff, man. Appreciate it.
You bet. God bless you, man.
All right. God bless you. And it's Merry Christmas now.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Love Christmas.
Yep. All right. Next hour, we haven't had a chance to do one of these in a bit, but we're going to have some Ask Me Anything. How are the questions looking, Todd? You satisfied?
Good. And right out of the gate, we have both sides of our entire effort to have the Tucker Fuentes post conversation. Let us reason together.
Yep.
It's good stuff.
Right. So we did Oron McIntyre, and then we did Josh Hammer. And then we did Jason Whitlock last week. We're going to do Joel Berry tomorrow.
All
right. So we're then thinking about for next week on the other side here, who we're going to maybe try to line up. So, all right, let's get right to it. Your turn to ask me anything here next. Stay tuned. We're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast, alongside Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Take advantage of that, please, by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you're a podcast listener, you can subscribe to that too, or just hit follow if you're on Apple iTunes. And that way, every time we do a new episode, it's right there in your feed. Thank you if you've done that. You can also let everyone else know how much you love our show by leaving us a 5-star review. A lot of you, tens of thousands of you, have done that. So thank you very much for that. And for you, if you add yours to that ever-growing pile today. And thanks to our friends over at MD Hearing. They make high-quality, easy-to-use, rechargeable hearing aids with exceptional sound quality, personalized to your hearing profile, and they cost a fraction of what typical hearing aids cost. In fact, their new Neo model cost over 90% less than clinical hearing aids. Fits right there inside your ear, so no one's going to ever know that it's there. And they just launched the Neo XS as well. It's their smallest hearing aid ever. So how do they do this? Well, MD Hearing was founded by an ENT surgeon who saw how so many of his patients needed hearing aids but could not afford them. So he made it his mission to develop a quality hearing aid that anyone could afford. Plus, MD Hearing has sold over 2 million hearing aids since then. And they offer a 45-day risk-free trial with a 100% money-back guarantee, so you can buy with confidence. Get the high-quality, affordable hearing aids you deserve with MD Hearing. Go to shopmdhearing.com and use promo code STEVE to get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. You cannot beat that. Plus, they're adding, as if that's not good enough, they're adding a free extra recharge case as well. That's a $100 value just for being here, followers of our show. That's shopmdhearing.com. Use the promo code Steve for this special offer. Shopmdhearing.com and use the promo code Steve. Well, we have been so jam-packed the last few weeks. We want to continue to have these conversations on the state of the right. And we have another one tomorrow. And it just so happened, because of how many requests we've had to get on the show, in order to have this, we thought, very important dialogue we're currently having, the one time slot that was like available the most was the second hour on Monday. So it's been a few weeks since we have done an Ask Me Anything. Right. So I would imagine we've got in terms of potency, a dense pile of questions, Mr. Erzin, that you have curated from our followers on Facebook. I am anxious to see. You guys know the drill. I have no idea what is coming, Aaron, until you line them up.
All right. We will begin with a rather lengthy two-part question, one from one listener, another from another. We'll begin with Tina, who says, Steve, I want to say thank you. Just listened to your segment from Wednesday, I believe it was, where you addressed the Tucker hysteria. Gosh, I've been so bothered by all the infighting on our side, despite the fact that what he has been saying, and I've listened to his full interviews, not just sound bites, is what many of us also believe, which is America first, not some other country, no matter who they are. And no, it doesn't make us anti-Semitic, racist, or even isolationists. It simply means we think we should put our own country above others. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And there are plenty of good people who cannot seem to understand his point, but apparently you do, and I want to commend you for your monologue. I'm a proud Blaze subscriber, by the way, and I enjoy listening and watching your show from time to time. And when I went to look up episodes this morning, I noticed that the title of the latest episode that you were talking about Tucker, so I decided to see what you had to say. There is a reason that the MAGA movement is a big tent movement. It's because in the arena of ideas, there are plenty of good ones, even though we may not all agree on everything. Thank goodness people like Tucker Carlson and even Glenn are pointing this out more and more. Anyway, again, thank you for your commentary. I just wish and hope, I guess, more folks can cease with cancel culture and simply use their common sense. Sincerely, Tina. Also, this one from David is how we'll begin. Steve, I turned off the radio in the car on your show the other day. My wife turned it back on over the following issue. Question, at what point is it legitimate to take a Christian dispute outside the church and splash it all over the public airwaves? Background, should your complaints against Tucker and Candace be discussed behind closed doors and a consensus reached? You and they are laying the underbelly of the church bare to the entire non-believing world.
Well, let me start with the second part first, okay? You make public comments, then it's entirely justified to have a public disagreement with those comments. I mean, do you know if Paul went and did a Matthew 18 with every Judaizer in Galatians that he confronted? They were making very public comments, so he addressed them in a public setting to the church in Galatia. That's a lot of people, not a one-on-one conversation. So, secondly, I have absolutely no idea what the evidence is that I am in some kind of covenantal brethren relationship with Candace Owens is. I have no idea what it is. You couldn't possibly pinpoint to me what that evidence would be. I just don't care what someone's verbal claims are. She's a consistent slanderer. And she's a slanderer of the brethren. The ridiculous claim last week, I have to take time off because the Trump administration is telling me my life's in danger. It's Thanksgiving weekend, man. You're just doing this for a bunch of gullible people you think are gullible hicks. Come on. So, no, I mean, I don't. Todd, you've been here for how many years?
It's over a decade.
Okay. You ever once seen me go to anybody who posted any criticism of anything I've ever sent online and demanded that they walk through the steps of Matthew 18 with me, whether they were a believer or not? You ever seen me do that one time?
I don't think so.
No, because it doesn't apply. Because we're in a very public setting. All right, so public commentary is totally worthy of, public commentary. And a rebuke is commentary. I have no idea, none. I mean, I don't know constructively I mean, I'm trying to think. I've been doing this for how many years? How many times I have affirmatively used Candace Owens as a source for literally anything in my line of work I've ever done? Can you think of one time? At least since you've been here?
No.
And you kind of came along right here. You started working here, what, 2015, 2014?
No, the only thing.
So around the time that she kind of first started becoming a thing, right?
Early on a couple different occasions, and I can't remember how far she goes back when she was like on the scene. We tried to book her just like we tried to book a lot of people. It never worked out, and that was that.
On the other hand, throughout the course of the time you have been here, how many times has the work that Tucker has done been something that we have positively cited and attempted to advance, forward, shape on the show? Or let shape us, frankly.
Perhaps more than anybody else.
Perhaps more than any other singular commentator, frankly. Horowitz's work would be pretty close. There's an elite tier of people whose body of work I have such respect for. And hey, Daniel doesn't believe Jesus is Messiah. I do. I think without Jesus, everyone goes to hell. So that's a systemic disagreement that Daniel and I have, correct?
It is.
Just like Tucker and I appear to have a very systemic disagreement about Israel and the history of Zionism as it relates to Christianity and what it even is, right?
Right.
Okay. That being said, have I permitted the systemic and I think you and I would both agree, and I know that Aaron would too. So I think all three of us would agree the systemic disagreement that I actually have with Daniel outweighs any of the systemic disagreements that I currently have with Tucker, given that's the question of whether Jesus is Lord of all or not, right? That's the fundamental question of existence, is which side of that debate you come down on, correct? All right. Daniel and I are on opposite sides of that debate, all right? Have I permitted it to shroud how much I have in great regard and respect and revere the collective body of his work?
You wrote a book with him.
Correct. In fact, I would argue I've done more to promote Daniel Horowitz's work than literally any other human being who has ever lived, because Daniel sucks at promoting his work, hates doing it, and finds it beneath him. So you would not have to work very hard. Is anybody within the sound of my voice shared a handful of Daniel links? Congratulations. You have done more to promote Daniel's work than he has. And I'm only slightly sarcastic with this. Daniel hates that stuff. All right. But I mean, I don't know that there's another person on earth that has done more to try to elevate Daniel's brand, name, and body of work in the last decade or so than I have. And yet we have a fundamental systemic disagreement. And our fundamental systemic disagreement is on what, according to my worldview anyway, the single most important question of all of existence. Who's Jesus Christ, right?
Yes.
Okay. On a still significant view, but clearly not to the significance of whether Jesus is God or not, Tucker Carlson and I have a systemic, just based on what his continued commentary on the subject, I have a systemic disagreement with him. Fair?
Yeah.
But overall, his body of work, we still hold in very high regard, correct?
Yeah, and we should.
Okay. I have no idea what Candace Owens has constructively added to any of this. Candace Owens has just been a pretty black woman taking advantage of a lot of gullible white people who have been greatly desirous. This goes back to the conversation I had last hour. Candace Owens is just the most blatant example of what I've loathed about this business more than anything. Dumb, dishonest people who, because of the melanin level in their skin, or because of their foreign associations, or because they like to have sex with people of the same gender, instantly get elevated to greatness and engagement farmed the hell out of, because an entire generation of boomers are just anxious to show they're not racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, homophobic bigots. I cannot think of a single constructive thing she has added that is worth any of the downside whatsoever. Tucker could get Israel wrong for literally the rest of his career, and we might just be getting to the point where it's time to question his overall body of work, in my view. I have no idea what Candace's overall body of work is. They're just not morally equivalent. They're not situationally equivalent. They're not talent equivalent. They're just not equivalent on any level at all. Candace has found a way to make being a gadfly into a career. Tucker is a demonstrated serious thinker. That doesn't mean he's always right. That doesn't mean he's always honest. mean, we're kind of getting, what is this now? The third person that Tucker has claimed he did not know that he had on his own show to promote. There was Josh Hammer, Tommy Robinson. There's somebody else that he did this to, that he claimed he didn't know him and he had him on his show. I can't remember who. Okay. But again, I mean, I think overall, Tucker's body of work. I mean, did you guys see the clip with him and Piers Morgan over Thanksgiving weekend? Did you see this one? Where he tried to get him to say faggot on the air?
No.
And Piers Morgan wouldn't do it because he knew it would happen to him in England if he said it publicly. So he wouldn't say it. See, again, the nation of Israel is existential to me because of the geopolitical forces we are up against. It is not salvific to me. So I will just continue disagreeing with Tucker on this as long as he continues in the line of dialogue he is currently in. And I'm totally okay with that. I don't feel the need that we have to agree with everybody on everything all the time. For goodness sakes, guys, I submit every word I write to a guy who thinks Rome is the one true church. And I just celebrated Reformation Day a month ago. I'm under no obligation. I feel no tension, no pressure that we all have to agree all of the time. We have to just be this monolith of unified thought. If anything, that is what makes me nervous. Okay, I'm scared of that. But disagreements, even fundamental ones. That's why I've always said for years, everybody says we're arguing too much. No, we're not really arguing at all. Now, see, here's the thing I do love about what Tucker's doing. We're actually arguing now. We're starting to have some real arguments now. Now we're having some arguments. We weren't arguing before. We were just trolling each other and memeing each other. That's not a movement. That's a grift. Now we're having real discussions, which reminds me, don't let me forget, I got to listen to that Oran Joel Berry debate with Tim Pool, since I'm at least partially responsible for it, because I told both of them, lobbied them both to go and do it. All right. So that's exactly what we need to be having. We need way more of that. We're starting to actually have arguments now. And it's okay. If it's not okay, then we're not okay. And we're pretty screwed. I think I may have just answered both of these actually with what I just said. Are you guys okay with those answers? Do you guys want to add anything to that, or do you think there's anything I should clarify at all?
It doesn't surprise me that there is a lot of passion in both directions, but the way we're going about doing this and the quality of the individuals we're introducing into part of the conversation just means that everybody has to raise their game accordingly. Absolutely have a passionate opinion one way or the other. Your point about it can't be the meme version. It has to be the full-on, we're going full.
You said meme, not mean. Because mean, I want to make sure the audience heard that. Because mean is very subjective. Yes, I'm sure someone thought everything I just said was mean. Given the amount of people that listen to this show every day, submitted, at least one person thought what I just said was mean. No, I just did it. At least one person said it was mean, right? Okay. That is entirely subjective. I just wanted to make sure people heard meme, not mean. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, we have to have the Socratic dialogue. This is big boy stuff.
I don't necessarily have a offended problem with what David brought up there. I disagree for the same reason. I disagree that it's applicable for the same reasons that you just articulated, Steve. However, and I'm not accusing David of this whatsoever, but if you're the type of person who believes that, I would just ask you that Matthew 18 is applicable in these sorts of public spats between stated believers. I just caution you, make sure you're applying that standard evenly. If Candace Owens makes claims about other individuals who also might happen to be Christians, are you making that same demand of her?
Yeah.
That's something I think that needs to be stated as well.
Yeah. Notice that almost never works both ways, by the way. So thank you for clarifying that, Aaron. I thought that was a very important point.
Let's go to S. Michael Hauserman, who says, I'm an avid cosplayer. For those of you who don't know, cosplaying is dressing up with immaculate costumes that match fictional characters' costumes. Very immaculate, very complicated costumes. I'm an avid cosplayer. I have multiple friends who are also cosplayers. This past month at Umacon, an anime convention, there was a street preacher, at least I assume he was, holding his Bible and yelling at us cosplayers, saying we were sinning and going to hell because we enjoy cosplay and anime. I took a moment and confronted him to say that by his logic, any church that holds a trunk or treat event is also sinning. To my surprise, he actually agreed with that. I applauded his consistency, told him that as a devout Christian, I disagreed with his viewpoint and went on my way as he continued to yell at everyone. So here's my two-part question. Do you agree or disagree with this person that cosplay and trunk or treat is a sin? And do you think he was right or wrong in the way he was confronting people by yelling at them about this?
So let's take them in order. On the first part, we haven't done this in a while, so let's reset this, okay? There are things, when I look at the debate that I've seen, two people I consider to be friends with in Joel Berry and Oron McIntyre, and so I'm saying to you guys that are listening what I've said to both of these men individually, okay? To me, what I think the debate is, and I brought this up to Whitlock last week if you heard the conversation with him, the debate is what is the limiting principle? Christianity in and of itself is a limiting principle. You die to yourself to gain eternal life. You sacrificially give. God himself sacrificially gave of himself for you. So Christianity in and of itself is a limiting principle. The first words God ever writes with his own hand are 10 commandments he puts on 2 stone tablets. It's a series of limiting principles. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, definitely don't do that, and don't do this either. 10 times. 10 limiting principles. So there have to be some limiting principles. My view of the Joel Berry-Oron debate is that Joel believes that Oron is advocating for no limiting principles. And that Oron believes he is just explaining what happens to a culture that doesn't have limiting principles. From knowing both men fairly well and talking to them extensively, including about one another, before I even get to the debate they just had with Tim Pool, that is my read of the process. Or maybe a better way of putting it is my read of how each of them understands what they're trying to say. So, do I think that Oron is correct that our enemies are behaving as if there are no limiting principles? 100%. Do I think that Joel Berry is correct that we are limited as believers in how we can respond to such a thing? 100%. But I have also said what? We're nowhere near that limit. We're nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. Which is why my answer is, we're going to do everything it takes to win, except what the Word of God says we explicitly cannot do. Now, once we get beyond these limiting principles, it's only been the recent era of Christianity. There wasn't anybody in the 7th century taken seriously in the church who said, 2 guys sodomizing each other is kind of cool. What do you guys think? Let's preach it. That literally was never debated. So those kinds of moral fundamentals were not given serious, that we are now genuflecting to. That's relatively new. Why? And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people who have a premillennial viewpoint think we're towards the end of days. Because we are within the church itself now having fundamental conversations and disagreements about moralities that at the same time Catholics and Protestants were killing each other, they still agreed on these things. But one place where we have differed greatly and have absolutely had knockdown, drag-out fights is where to place limiting principles once we get outside of the specific places that God made it very clear that's a limiting principle. For example, if you're Pentecostal, all you do is go to church during the music and dance, and it's called worship. If you're Baptist, you're not going to dance. Where do we put a limiting principle? Are Baptists right to be concerned that most of maybe most is too strong. How about this? Too often dancing turns into cavorting. and sexual simulation. Do they have a legitimate concern about that?
Sure.
Sure. And so because of that concern, guess what they did? They put a limiting principle on that. Not everyone agrees. Hence, disagreement. And so how we choose to navigate this on this show is with these three things. When we get outside what the scriptures say, you absolutely cannot do. And I think this question is outside of that. Does anybody want to disagree with me on that?
No, I don't think
Okay.
so.
All right. So you okay with that, Aaron?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So when we get outside of a very specific limiting principle, then we have to ask ourselves, what do we do in a gray area? All right. Well, the gray areas are what I can receive, what I shall redeem, and what I must reject. Well, Steve, how can something be something you must reject if we're outside the limiting principle? Well, let me give you an example. You move to a small town. Football is the high school football team is the alpha and omega of this small town. Do you have to automatically, I'm even going to ask Todd in his current sports bro state, do I have to automatically reject that this town takes football seriously, maybe too seriously, and not partake of it whatsoever, the local custom? Do I have to just objectively reject that right at the outset?
No.
No. But, so not an automatic limiting principle, right?
Right.
But the district championships next Friday night, and the star quarterback didn't hear no means no from one of the girls in the school. And the town wants to now cover this up because they really want to win that championship. And it's a gray area. You know, it's he said, she said. What do we know? You see what I'm saying? Now are we getting into an arena where you as a believer maybe have to reject this?
Of course.
Of course we are. Because now they have taken a custom that even they feel very strongly about, and they have fashioned it as an idol. So that custom in and of itself is not immoral. The custom in and of itself is not unbiblical. The custom in and of itself is not godless. What they have chosen to form it into and pursue it as has made it so. And therefore, now you must reject it. See where I'm going with this? Are we okay so far?
Sure.
Okay. Then there are just things we can receive. Like, let's say the town doesn't do that. You think they're a little weird. All right. You've heard of closing businesses on Sundays, but not Friday nights. You think it's a little weird. Okay, how far they take with this? You love you some football, but you're not like carving the high school initials into your five head, right? Okay, you think it goes too far, okay? But is anything being asked of you at this moment that puts you and your own soul in any peril whatsoever by partaking in it? Might be weird, might be obnoxious, might go too far, but the answer is no. So you can receive it, okay? And then there are things that we have to redeem. Okay? Like, for example, when you see the most influential platform in all of your culture is pop culture, particularly when it comes to storytelling and original content. That seems like an area that needs to be redeemed because everybody's going to drink from this trough. We're all drinking from it, right? So do you want them drinking from your worldview or from the spirit of the age? So that's how I would answer the first part of your question. If you can take part in this without succumbing to the idolatry of others who are also taking part in it, then I don't have a problem with it at all. I think you also, though, there are some movies, I don't review publicly all the movies I see. Because there are some movies that after I see them, like, probably shouldn't review that one. Because I'm a public figure. I have one of the largest platforms any evangelical in America currently has. And so I have to be cognizant of the fact that I could put a rubber stamp on something by talking about it objectively that might cause, as Paul would say, the lesser brother to stumble. You see what I'm trying to say? And I'm not always going to get that right. And there's going to be times I'm going to go too far and you're going to disagree, or not go far enough and you're going to disagree about that. Okay? So if you can take part in the custom without turning it into an idol, or you can do so in a way that doesn't cause someone who is maybe coming out of that and did turn it into an idol and inspiring them to return back to that idolatry, then by all means, use your freedom accordingly. On the second question, I think you know my answer. There's a fine tradition of people being yelled at. and hearing the gospel. It's happened all throughout the centuries, in fact. So I really wouldn't get caught up in the method by which someone is communicating something in this day and age. Wouldn't say that in every day and age, but in this day and age, given how soft-headed we are, I'd say it quite a bit. I'd get way more caught up in what's the actual message in and of itself. Thoughts?
That was comprehensive. Just to be a bit more specific, I on the matter at hand, I would say that when it comes to cosplay specifically, it's not a sin inherently. Steve made a great distinction there, but you have to ask yourself if you have an idolatry problem. When I was a child, I did as a child. Cosplay strikes me as inherently idolatrous. That community, a bunch of adults basically enjoying dress up when we have systemic cultural problems. So that's the way I would look at it. Do you have an idolatry problem? Because you can have them as all kinds of Christians these days have idolatry problems, just because that's probably the biggest one you need to look out for as a Christian.
On the other hand, if, dude, you're working 70 hours a week providing for a family, you went to like 14 school board meetings this past year, you've seen them, and you're like, once a year I want to go to the cosplay convention, you're probably like, okay, then cool, right?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But that doesn't automatically discount it either. We gotta watch out for our dark recesses and where we go and why, no matter what we do those 70 hours a week.
Generally speaking, not specifically speaking, generally speaking, cosplaying, you could say, well, this is the same time that a sports bro would devote, and this is not a great example, as Todd, I'm sure, would be quick to point out, but sports bro, hey, I'm reading about my team on my favorite team's blog, 3 to 4 hours a week, and then 2 or 3 times a year I go to a game. Is that inherently different than the cosplayer? No. The fundamental question, though, is how much of this time is really being sucked up for this versus maybe other more profitable in terms of spiritually profitable things you could be doing. And I think that's the thing that everybody has to wrestle with.
Whatever your leisure pursuit is, you have to look at that constantly,
Yes.
no matter what anyway. You bet. 100%. All right, good stuff. More of your questions when we come back. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, and we are powered by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. We cannot afford to take our rights for granted. And our friends at Patriot Mobile have helped us to draw a line in the sand for the last 12 years as leaders in the red alternative economy space. They're also one of the only carriers in all of mobile phonedom, offering premium access on all 3 major U.S. networks, giving you the same or better premium coverage in many cases as the main carriers. You can switch networks anytime you want. They offer unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, and more. Switching is easier than ever before. Activate in minutes from your home or office. Take it from me. We made the switch in minutes. And then I thought, well, maybe, it's just because I've been talking about them on the air. But there's a reason why we have stuck with them now for over 5 years as a family, because their customer service is terrific. So keep your number, keep your phone, upgrade, change, whatever you want to do. If you're locked into a terrible contract, they've got contract buyout programs to help you get out of doing business with that communist corporation if you want. All right, take advantage of all this today by going to patriotmobile.com/Steve. And if you use my name, Steve, as your promo code, you'll get started with a free month of service today. Promo code Steve for a free month of service today to get you started at patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Let's continue on with some Ask Me Anything.
Let's go to Megan Ashley Turnage, who says, why do you think there is a resurgence in the use of the word retarded on the political right? As a mother of a child with Down syndrome, I'm more sensitive and aware of the word than most. As the wife of a Marine, I'm exposed to a lot of troubling and colorful language, but have learned not to be overly sensitive unless the term is addressed at me or mine directly. Do you think the common use of the term could negatively affect how people with intellectual disabilities are perceived and treated in society? Thank you.
Excellent question. First of all, credit to you for the way you frame that question. Unless I think it's directed at me, why would I take offense to it? Similarly, I've said this, if your name's Boomer, mean, your generation wrecked the country. It's just a fact. I mean, before the Summer of Love, before and after the Summer of Love, gentlemen, was there more unified moral belief in America before and after the counterculture?
There was more before.
Yeah, regardless of race or socioeconomic status, correct?
Yes.
All right, so which generation did that?
Boomer.
Okay, so therefore that's not in dispute, correct?
Correct.
Did I say every single person born within the year parameters of the boomer generation kamikazed the country? Is that what I said?
Yes, you did, Steve.
No, I did not. Your name's not Boomer, okay? So don't get defensive. People say, hey, Gen Xers are too lackadaisical and lazy. I'm like, well, I've been a Gen Xer all my life. Most of the people I've known are Gen Xers, and a lot of them are too lackadaisical and lazy. You know, I mean, I don't take offense at that. I work 70-hour weeks. So, group identity, going back to the Tucker thing, because he nailed this last week, group identity is almost always an idolatry. Almost always. I won't go so far as to say always. Like if you're living under Nero or Domitian, and they're calling fatwas on Christians, I think we all agree group identity is not an idolatry at that point. All right, if you're drawing fish in the sand and you're hiding in catacombs, group identity, not an idolatry. It's a survival instinct at that point, correct?
Sure.
All right, but barring those extreme circumstances, more often than not, group identity is an idolatry. God did not make you in a group. He made you individually. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Your identity is as an individual. You do not collectively have guilt nor redemption in the kingdom of God, but individually. So I want to make sure we highlight the way she framed that, because that's the right heat check right there, is the way that she framed it. Now, as to the question at large, here's all you need to know about the term retarded. The people that took that word away in the 90s and 2000s are the ones who applauded Iceland for getting rid of its Down syndrome problem by murdering all the Down syndrome kids. And that's all you need to know.
And they transgender your kids.
Yes. Yeah. That's all you need to know. It wasn't whatsoever about sympathy for kids with Down syndrome. It was about controlling speech, because they go out there and recommend you murder your kid if it's going to have Down syndrome on a daily basis. They don't care about the kids with Down syndrome. Down syndrome, here's the thing, in a Christian worldview, you do not chastise people or punish people for a condition that they are born into in a sinful world.
You're commanded to take care of them.
In fact, you're commanded to do the opposite. Yes. So there's Down syndrome. And then as far as our show is concerned, and then there is retardation, which is an extreme amount of self-induced stupidity from continual denial of both common sense and the most important existential facts of the universe. Number one being, God is God and I am not. Do that enough, and you're going to make yourself retarded. Self-induced stupidity beyond hope. Someone with Down syndrome has a disability that they were born with. And not only should they be discarded, or not be discarded, as the people who claim to care about the word retarded then turned right around and did, and then bragged about it, but if anything, they should be given a special status because of that and protected. Thank you for the question. Happy to clarify that. Thank you.
Another Megan is up next, Megan Nanya, who says, what advice would you give to husbands, fathers, even me as a mother and wife, around middle-aged, who've been taught that pornography is okay for boys and men to consume? Since you are a dad and have sons and daughters, a son and daughters, I know Bible says in Matthew about looking at others with lust as a sin and should not be tolerated, but how do we get that to a generation that doesn't see it that way and almost sees it as normal? I hate even asking this because it's taboo, but we need to have these conversations as Christians on how to navigate this, especially when the world is so hypersexualized. And thank you.
I think that, number one, I would start with what is the purpose and design of sexuality, who is the purposer, and the designer. In this last generation, and this isn't true just of this issue, but every issue, and I've talked about this before, but just not for several years. But if you're a longtime listener to this show, I'm going to say something that you used to hear me talk about a lot. The previous era of Christendom in America, particularly those who were politically involved, savvy, engaged, chose to remove the authority of God's word. The authority of God's word from their language and vocabulary. And so things were no longer Bible-based, they were faith-based. Or, well, what faith are we talking about? Well, just a nebulous blob. Things were not biblically based, they were moral. Well, whose morals? There was a phenomenal film that not enough people saw. It's about 20, 25 years old now. And it was back when TBN was trying to get serious into making well-made Christian movies. And they made a couple that were very good. They did one, I think the best they did a movie about Queen Esther called One Night with the King. It's very, very well done. Very well done. High production value, well written, well directed. It's really well done. Okay. And so they were trying to get into that space. I don't know why they stopped. I don't know, because they were making some good stuff. They should have continued on. And one of the movies they made was called Time Changer. And Time Changer stars a lot of people that if you watched TV in the 70s and 80s, you would recognize. The captain of the Love Boat. The Barney Miller guy is in this. Paul Rodriguez is in this. Okay. This movie is, I think, from like 2000 or 2002, somewhere in there. And the story of the movie is it's a seminary at the turn of the 20th century, early 1900s. And there's a young faculty member there that is concerned about the divorce rate in America is 8%. And youth crime is up, to 5-6% when it was at 0. And he's very concerned about, with more urbanization and industrialization, that we're losing some of our moral center when we were a more agrarian society. And so he writes this book urging moral values to return. And he thinks that the smartest way to do that is to kind of divorce the authority of the Bible from morality so that people will then just behave more morally no matter whether they go to church or they're Christians or not, particularly with this mass new wave of immigrants coming in from Europe in different belief systems. Of course, the people coming in from Europe, back then we thought Catholicism was a different belief system. Okay, now we're just importing, Muslims, Islam. So the faculty board loves this idea, thinks it's very progressive. But there's one member of the faculty, played by the captain from the Love Boat, whose father literally built a time machine by following H.G. Wells's specs from the time machine. So he went into the future. And he saw what happens when you remove the authority of God's word from all of these moral debates. And so the way that the bylaws of the university are, all of the elders have to sign off before a book can be endorsed. And he's the holdout. And so he tells this young member of the faculty, you jump in this time machine, you go see the future, you see what I've seen. And when you come back, if you still think that this is the right approach, by golly, I will give you the endorsement and, good luck to you. I hope you sell 1 million copies. Because I'm pretty confident when you go see what I have seen, you're not going to have that. You're not going to have that belief anymore. Well, guy comes to the early 21st century, zany hijinks ensues. He sees that what happens when when everyone does what is wise in their own eyes, when morality is just a generic thing, it's a nebulous blob. Who's the authority? Who are we to fear? What are we afraid of? Blah, 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 blah. And decides I need to write a different book. Okay? This applies not to just this moral dilemma, but all of them. Reestablish the authority of the Word of God. Let me just speak about myself here personally, because drinking is not an issue for me. Drugs aren't an issue for me. I'm not a chronic gambler. We can probably debate whether smoking in and of itself is sinful. I'm not sure that I would agree with it, that it is. But that's not an issue for me. Pornography, unlike what Bob said last hour, is an issue for me. Has been since I've been like 11 years old. And I can just tell you from my own battles with this over the years. When I think that my time belongs to me, I am way more inclined to prove the dog returns to its own vomit. When I think my time belongs to him, I'm way less inclined to do so. Someone will always rule, and something must always be worshipped. So whether it's on this issue or any other issue you want to ask me about, the authority of the Word of God has to be made great again. Especially coming out of an era where we're all to some degree tainted by the sexual revolution. The amount of us who can just stand up stand alone on our own integrity in this area and say, follow me as I follow Christ. I'm sure there's some. And that's the issue. There's some. Not a lot. I mean, what was I going to say to my old man? How did I get hooked into porn at 11? It was his. How do most kids in the Gen X generation? You found dad's stash, Hustlers, Playboys in the garage or the basement. Now mom's going to have him come and talk to you? It's his. What is the authority? Who is the authority? What is the authority? What is it we all have to acknowledge is in charge? Who is it we all have to acknowledge is in charge? This was a strategic blunder. And I get why they did it, because the real reason they did it is you don't get booked on a lot of cable news shows saying, well, Jesus says to even look on a woman with lust is to commit adultery in your heart. You get booked on the conservative cable news shows by saying things like, well, porn is immoral. So that everybody can then just turn around, even if they themselves are stigmatized by it. Well, that's just a general principle. I mean, even at times in my life, I've indulged in pornography. I knew it was immoral. I knew it was. So you're just giving me kind of a general sentiment to assent to. You see what I'm trying to say? There's no accountability mechanism. Who's in charge? There's a reason why very few guys get sent home on a mission trip for porn. I'm sure it's happened. And if that's you, you're especially retarded, so congratulations. But most of the time, when you're doing things, when you're in the center of God's will, you're not thinking about whatever is your pet idol.
Look at you weave questions together today.
Do you like that?
That was professional.
I'm connecting dots. It's what I do. Yes. Throwing a little alliteration, and maybe I could be a pastor. Indeed. Yeah, probably not, though. Not nearly nice enough. But if we're in the center of God's will, we're in the middle of his kingdom, that's usually when we're the least tempted to leave it. It's when we're on our own. We think our time is our own. And our money is our own. Our eyes are our own. Who or what is the authority? Make the authority of the Word of God great again. Directly appeal to the authority of the Word of God. When your enemy says, make your argument without the Bible, laugh. Hey, you know what? Fight me without your best punch. Play me without your best player. See if you're any good then. Well, how good the Bulls would have been, I would have Michael Jordan. Well, they did. So they were great. So how you like them apples? There's a reason why they want us to mothball it. The last generation chose to voluntarily do so. Bring it back out. Push that float back into the parade. Let that lion out of its cage. It'll do the job just fine. All right, gentlemen, we're going to do the rest of these in the overtime today for subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. Until then, in these unprecedented times, make sure if you're like, you know what, I've not been flogged enough in the year 2025. I think I'm going to do the real estate market. And in December, if that is you, first of all, you got way more hair on your chest than I do. Secondly, definitely make sure you've got an agent you can trust to guide you through that process. Where would you find them? The name says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com will get you started with an agent there whose track record of success has been verified, or we wouldn't recommend them to you. And a lot of times they're from right here in the Blaze audience as well. So whether you want to get across town, you're trying to get across the country, ultimately, make sure you get across the finish line of what can even be a stressful process when things are normal and not unprecedented. Get started today at realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, we're going to stick around and record some bonus Ask Me Anything for subscribers in the overtime for the rest of you. We'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck and right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.